In a place where the sun's light can barely reach anymore, two worlds have been staring at each other for billions of years. But throughout all of human history, we never even knew it.
The orbital behavior doesn't match the classification.
A strange shadow clung to Pluto at the darkest edge of the solar system. The existence of this world caused Pluto to lose its status as a planet after more than 70 years. You're watching Astrexo. And to understand why Pluto is no longer considered the 9th planet of the solar system, we have to begin with Charon. Every major discovery in astronomy usually begins with the strange signals appearing in the middle of endless, monotonous data. And Charon was no different. It wasn't discovered during a mission to hunt for new worlds. No one pointed a telescope toward Pluto believing something was hiding beside it. In 1978, James Christie was simply doing a repetitive job so dull it was almost sleep-inducing. He was reviewing old photographs of Pluto to track its movement along the outer edge of the solar system. Those images seemed completely unremarkable. They were blurry, noisy, and often dismissed as technical failures. But then one detail started to bother him. Pluto did not appear as a normal point of light. It looked stretched to one side, as if something were clinging to it in the darkness. At first, the explanation sounded simple. Maybe Earth's atmosphere had distorted the image. Maybe the telescope had vibrated slightly during exposure. Errors like that happen constantly in astronomy, and most of the time they mean absolutely nothing. But this time, something felt wrong. The stars in the background still appeared sharp. Only Pluto was distorted. That tiny detail changed everything. Because if it was not a technical error, then it meant that out there, in a place where almost no light could reach, another world existed that humanity had never known before. But James Christie did not look at those images the way an ordinary person would look at corrupted data. He had spent years observing binary star systems, where two stars orbit each other through the depths of space. And over time, his eyes had become trained to notice tiny, irregular motions that most people would completely overlook. It was that experience that made him stop when he saw the strange distortion beside Pluto. There was something about its shape that felt too familiar, too organized to be just a random error. Then he realized where the real anomaly was hiding. The distant stars in the background still appeared perfectly sharp. They did not shake. They were not blurred. They were not stretched out of shape. Only Pluto looked as if something were pulling it sideways through the darkness. And in that exact moment, the problem was no longer the telescope. If Earth's atmosphere had caused the distortion, the entire image should have been warped at the same time. But that never happened. Which meant the thing altering Pluto's image was not between Earth and the telescope. It was beside Pluto itself. Out there, where the sun's light had faded into something as weak as a distant memory, another world was moving silently through the darkness, completely unnoticed by humanity. James Christie began re-examining old photographs of Pluto stored in the observatory archives. Many of those images had been discarded years earlier because they were considered technical failures. But the more he looked, the more he realized that strange detail always appeared. A small bulge protruding beside Pluto. It never disappeared. It was not random. Its position changed over time, as if it were orbiting the planet through the darkness. Christie and his colleague Robert Harrington began tracking that motion across a massive collection of old data. And eventually, they found the detail that changed everything. The mysterious object completed one orbit every 6.4 days. Exactly the same amount of time Pluto needed to rotate once on its axis. That was the moment every piece finally fell into place. The defect in those photographs had never been a defect at all. It was a real world hiding beside Pluto for years without humanity ever realizing it. A massive moon locked together with Pluto in the same motion. Two lonely worlds at the edge of the solar system, orbiting each other as if they could never be separated. After the existence of the new moon was confirmed, it temporarily bore only a dry name in astronomical data, S/1978P1, a cold symbol among millions of objects in space. But James Christie wanted to give this world a real name, a name that held meaning for him personally. He was inspired by his wife, Charlene, who was often called by the nickname Char. Then he added "on" after it, just like how particles in physics are named. And that's how Charon was born. Initially, it was just a very private tribute. But then something strange happened. Christie later discovered that in Greek mythology, Charon was the ferryman who carried souls across the darkness to the kingdom of Pluto. An almost unbelievable coincidence, as if the name had always belonged to this world long before humans saw it. In 1986, the name Charon was officially recognized. And from that moment, the solitary moon at the edge of the solar system was no longer just an unknown object. It became Pluto's eternal companion. But Charon did not appear simply to become another moon of Pluto. Its existence began to shatter everything humanity once believed about Pluto. For decades, Pluto had been considered the 9th planet of the solar system. A tiny world, yet still carrying the title of a true planet. But then, Charon appeared and brought with it a difficult truth. As astronomers tracked Charon's motion around Pluto, they finally had enough data to accurately calculate the mass of the entire system. And the results changed everything completely. Pluto was far lighter than humanity had ever imagined. It was not a giant frozen planet stranded at the edge of the solar system. It was small. So small that its mass was not even 1/6 the mass of Earth's moon. But the stranger detail was Charon itself. This moon was far too large compared to Pluto. It carried nearly 12% of the mass of the world it orbited, a ratio almost unheard of anywhere else in the solar system. And that was when scientists began to realize something astonishing. Maybe Pluto and Charon had never truly been a planet and moon. Perhaps they were two worlds locked together in the same gravitational dance at the dark edge of the solar system. In the solar system, moons are usually much smaller than the planets they orbit. Our moon carries only about 1% of Earth's mass. But Charon was different. It was far too large compared to Pluto. So large that the two almost became equal worlds. And that created a phenomenon unlike anything else in the solar system. Normally, when a moon orbits a planet, the shared center of gravity of the system lies deep inside the planet itself. But Pluto and Charon were different. Their center of mass existed in the dark emptiness between the two bodies. It did not belong to Pluto, and it did not belong to Charon. That meant the two worlds were not truly orbiting each other. Instead, Both of them revolved around an invisible point in space, as if an unseen gravitational tether were holding these two lonely worlds together in eternal darkness. And then, things became even stranger. Charon always kept one face pointed toward Pluto, but Pluto did exactly the same thing. They were tidally locked to each other. If you stood on the surface of Pluto, you would see Charon hanging motionless in the sky, never rising, never setting, just silently existing there forever like a giant frozen planet suspended in the night. But if you stood on the opposite side of Pluto, you would never even know Charon existed. These two worlds are bound together in an endless stare across nearly 20,000 kilometers of freezing space. And perhaps that is what makes the Pluto-Charon system one of the strangest places ever discovered in the solar system. Those two strange facts were exactly what threw everything into chaos. The center of mass existed outside Pluto, and both worlds were tidally locked to each other. That led many astronomers to begin asking a question that had never truly existed before. If both objects revolved around a point suspended in empty space, then was Charon really a moon at all? Or were Pluto and Charon actually two planets bound together inside the same gravitational system? That was when the debate began, not just about Pluto, but about the very definition of a planet. For decades, humanity believed the solar system could be divided into clearly defined categories: planets, moons, asteroids. But Pluto and Charon did not fit neatly into any of them. They existed at the boundary of every definition astronomy had ever created. And then, an uncomfortable truth began to emerge. Maybe the problem was not Pluto. Maybe the real mistake was humanity's attempt to simplify the universe itself. By 2006, the International Astronomical Union seriously considered classifying Pluto and Charon as a double planet. But in the end, that debate led to an even more shocking decision. Pluto was stripped of its planetary status. After more than 70 years living inside humanity's textbooks, the tiny world at the edge of the solar system was placed into an entirely different category. And the irony was almost painful. Charon, the companion that helped us understand Pluto more clearly, also became part of the reason it was pulled away from its place as the 9th planet of the solar system. So how did these two strange worlds come to exist at the edge of the solar system? For many years, scientists believed Charon was born from a catastrophe. A massive object slammed into the early Pluto with enough force to tear an entire world apart. Billions of tons of ice and rock were blasted into space, slowly coming together to form Charon. It was a reasonable theory, violent, chaotic, and very similar to the way our moon is believed to have formed. But then new data began to appear. Pluto and Charon were not like the early Earth. They were not gigantic masses of molten rock. They were far colder, far smaller, and filled with water ice as hard as stone. That completely changed the way they reacted during collisions. Modern simulations gradually began revealing another possibility. Maybe Pluto and Charon were not born from a catastrophic impact. Maybe everything happened far more quietly, far more strangely. Two young worlds drifting past each other at just the right speed, slow enough to avoid destroying one another. They collided, briefly merged together, then twisted through the darkness like a single distorted body floating in deep space. For a few short hours, Pluto and Charon almost became one world, but gravity eventually pulled them apart again. Not completely. From that moment on, they remained permanently locked together, And that is what truly makes this system different. Maybe the Pluto-Charon system was not created through total destruction. Maybe it was born from a collision gentle enough for both worlds to survive, yet impossible for either of them to ever drift apart again. If Pluto and Charon had once collided violently enough to explode apart, they should have been completely crushed and mixed together. But reality tells a different story. Pluto contains significantly more rock than Charon. That means both worlds managed to preserve most of their original internal structure. They were not completely destroyed. They survived. And that is exactly what makes the story far stranger. Because that collision did not merely create Charon's orbit, it changed the fate of both worlds from the inside out. As Pluto and Charon pulled violently against each other while separating, tidal forces began crushing their interiors. Enormous friction built up beneath their frozen outer layers. And, for the first time after billions of kilometers of darkness at the edge of the solar system, heat appeared deep inside Charon. Enough heat to melt an entire world from the inside outward. Beneath that seemingly lifeless shell of ice, a hidden underground ocean began to form. And that is the detail that changed the way scientists viewed Charon forever. Today, it looks cold and motionless. But at one point in its history, this tiny world may have contained a real ocean beneath its frozen surface. A place that once moved, once warmed, and once felt far more alive than humanity had ever imagined. For decades, Charon remained nothing more than a small shadow beside Pluto. We knew it was there, but we barely understood what it truly was. Everything changed on July 14, 2015, when New Horizons tore through the Pluto-Charon system at terrifying speed. In just a few brief hours, the distant points of light at the edge of the solar system suddenly became real worlds with surfaces, scars, and histories. And Charon left scientists stunned. It was not a smooth, frozen sphere abandoned in the darkness. Its surface had been ripped apart by enormous fractures, towering cliffs, deep valleys, massive cracks stretching across that small world like the scars of an ancient wound. The most striking feature was a vast canyon system near the equator, including Serenity Chasma. It stretches for at least 1,800 kilometers and reaches depths of nearly 7.5 kilometers in some places. Compared to the Grand Canyon on Earth, this fracture is not merely larger. It almost makes the Grand Canyon look like a tiny cut in the ground. And that was the moment Charon completely changed in our eyes. A distant, frozen world, one that seemed long dead, was carrying evidence that it had once endured an event powerful enough to fracture its own crust apart. The fractures on Charon were not carved by flowing water or eroded by wind like they are on Earth. They are the scars of a world that was stretched from the inside until it finally broke apart. And the most terrifying question is this: what could possibly cause an entire celestial body to crack open like that? The answer begins deep beneath Charon's frozen crust. After the collision that created the Pluto-Charon system, an enormous amount of heat remained trapped inside its core. Over time, heat from radioactive elements continued building silently within. Gradually, the deep layers of ice beneath the surface began to melt, and in one of the coldest regions of the solar system, a real ocean emerged beneath Charon's frozen shell. It was something almost nobody had ever imagined. A tiny world at the edge of darkness once contained liquid water. But eventually, Charon began to cool. and across millions of years, its internal heat slowly escaped into deep space. That hidden ocean started freezing once again, and that was when the catastrophe began. Most materials shrink when they freeze, but water does not. It expands. As the underground ocean turned back into ice, its volume increased and began pushing upward against the crust above it. Slowly, relentlessly. The entire surface of Charon was stretched like glass under immense pressure from within, until one day it simply could not endure anymore. The crust shattered apart. Gigantic chasms tore across the surface of the entire world. And the strangest part is that those scars are still there today, like fossilized remains of an ocean that died billions of years ago. One scientist once described Charon as a world that tore itself apart. It sounds exaggerated, but when you look at Charon's surface, it is almost the most accurate description possible. Today, this world appears silent and lifeless. There are no active volcanoes, no atmosphere thick enough to reshape the landscape, no wind, no rain. And that absolute stillness preserved every trace of the ancient catastrophe that once happened here. Charon's surface is not just rock and ice. It resembles a fossil archive of a dead world, a frozen photograph capturing the moment its internal ocean vanished forever. But the strange thing is that Charon does not have only one face. It feels like two worlds stitched together into one. To the north lies Oz Terra, an ancient land covered in scars. Rugged terrain. Countless impact craters. Massive fractures slicing across the surface like scars carved into the crust of an entire planet. This is the remaining piece of primordial Charon, still preserving the torn state it suffered billions of years ago. But when you look toward the south, everything changes completely. Vulcan Planitia appears like a vast frozen sea, stretching all the way to the horizon. Fewer impact craters, and across that surface are markings that resemble streams of material that once flowed before freezing solid. That leads to a stunning possibility. Perhaps, after Charon's underground ocean died, part of this world was submerged and completely reshaped by molten ice rising from below. Not with lava like on Earth, but with ice. A form of cryovolcanism existing in a place where sunlight can barely reach anymore. Scientists believe Vulcan Planitia may be one of the largest cryovolcanic regions ever discovered in the solar system. But there is no molten rock here like there is on Earth. No oceans of glowing lava. What once erupted across Charon was a mixture of ice, water, and sludge so cold it is almost impossible to imagine. As the underground ocean beneath the surface began to freeze, pressure inside Charon rose violently. Liquid water trapped beneath the icy crust started searching for a way out. And then the crust cracked apart. Gigantic fractures opened across the surface, allowing ice lava to erupt from below. Slower than volcanoes on Earth. Colder. But operating on the scale of an entire world. Over time, those frozen flows flooded the southern hemisphere and formed the vast plains of Vulcan Planitia. A landscape so smooth and silent it almost looks unreal. Yet, scattered across that frozen sea are lonely mountains like Kubrick Mons, isolated among strange depressions in the terrain. And perhaps that is the most astonishing part of all. Some scientists believe these mountains are actually fragments of the ancient northern crust. They were torn away from the old surface, drifting across rivers of cryovolcanic ice like gigantic icebergs in a frozen ocean before becoming trapped when the entire plane solidified once again. But even then, Charon still held another secret. At its north pole exists a gigantic dark red region so deep in color that it looks like a burn mark across the top of the entire world. The New Horizons team named this place Mordor Makula, after the Land of Darkness in The Lord of the Rings. And what fascinates scientists most is that the red color is not rock. It is organic material. Complex molecules formed when methane was blasted by cosmic radiation for billions of years in the coldest darkness of the solar system. What confuses scientists most is the origin of that red material. Where did the methane on Charon come from? The most widely accepted theory leads everything back to Pluto once again. Despite being small and frozen, Pluto still possesses a thin atmosphere filled with nitrogen and methane. But at a distance of nearly 6 billion kilometers from the Sun, Pluto's gravity is far too weak to hold on to all of that gas forever. Part of its atmosphere constantly leaks away into deep space, and Charon, the companion locked beside it for billions of years, silently captures some of that escaping gas. During Charon's polar winter, which lasts for more than a century, temperatures at the North Pole fall below -240 degrees Celsius. Cold enough for methane drifting through space to freeze directly onto the surface. Thin layers slowly accumulate across spans of time that feel almost endless. Then, when sunlight finally returns, ultraviolet radiation begins breaking apart those methane molecules. Slowly, relentlessly, and across millions of years, they transform into the dark red organic material that New Horizons sees today. That means the red stain on Charon is not merely a geological feature. It is evidence of a connection that still continues between these two worlds. Pluto is slowly losing pieces of its own atmosphere into space, and Charon is carrying those remains across its frozen surface. As if, at the dark edge of the solar system, one world is still quietly leaving traces of itself upon the companion beside it. In Greek mythology, Charon was the ferryman who carried souls into the kingdom of Pluto. And strangely enough, science eventually revealed that the name almost seemed destined from the very beginning. Charon is not just a moon. It and Pluto are locked together in an eternal gravitational dance at the edge of the solar system. And the astonishing part is that this entire story began with nothing more than an image defect that was almost ignored forever. And perhaps that is what Charon truly represents. That the most distant and darkest corners of the universe are still hiding histories far more violent and extraordinary than anything humanity has ever imagined. Thank you for staying with Astrexo until the end of this journey. In a universe this vast and cold, the fact that you chose to spend your time traveling alongside us truly means more than words can say. If you enjoyed today's video, don't forget to like, share, and leave a comment telling us what fascinated you most about the story of Charon and Pluto. And if you want to continue exploring the deep mysteries of the cosmos with Astrexo, be sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. Your support is what allows Astrexo to keep creating emotional journeys through the universe in the future. We'll see you again on the next voyage among the stars.